Howdy folks, I wanted to make a video on the Baudis GP15. I recently acquired this glider at the end of the summer and maidened it about 3 or 4 weeks ago or so. I really love this glider and I wanted to make a video on some of the features of it and also some of the elements that I found tricky when I was building it actually. So Baudis themselves installed the Jetec unit, so that's a service you can pay for. I didn't want to start cutting the fuselage apart because that was too scary for me, and getting the Jetec unit installed properly and aligned properly and so on. So I asked them to do that, but I installed everything else. So the servos in the wings, so there's 4 servos in this model, 4 flying surfaces on the wings, and then the surfaces on the tail, the rudder and elevator, as well as all the battery in the compartment up front. So this video just covers, as I say, the model itself and some of that install, and just showing you through some of the settings as well. So I fly on Jetec, and I'll talk you through some of the settings on the transmitter and how that translates to flying characteristics. I'll also talk about setup, centre of gravity and so on, and I'll split this all up into chapters so that you can click to the bits that you want to in the video, so you can click to those in the timeline underneath on YouTube. So yeah, so stay tuned for that, and I hope you enjoyed the video. So first things first, Baudis include this canopy tool to open the canopy. It's just a case of sliding it in the top little slot here and pushing it backwards, and the canopy just pops out. And here you can see my install. So we've got batteries up the front. I've got a very small amount of lead in here as well, just about 30 grams or so. So that's just right up the front in here. I used this battery made by a company called Yo-Woo. I got these just off of Amazon actually. I bought these just as a quick solution for getting a battery actually for the front, because I normally order off Hobby King, but they're impossible to get batteries from anymore because, well, not impossible, but you have to pay a lot of postage to get them over to the UK. So I don't order from Hobby King anymore. But actually, these are fantastic little batteries. I bought these, as I said, as a stopgap, but they're going to be the batteries that I use because they're so good. I'll put a link in the description underneath to these on Amazon if you want to check them out. But I've had them on my battery charger, and they register really good internal resistance, so they're in really good shape actually. So yeah, really pleased with them for the price. But this is the install, and you can see through here I've got the Jetec battery, the RB3100, which is 3.1 amp hours. Great batteries, I use these in all my models. The Jetec switch down here. So this is operated by the magnets, which I'm sure some of you all know. I've got the Rex 10 assist receiver. I don't use the assist actually, but I do use the G meters and so on these, as well as the inbuilt vario. I find those really, really useful. And again, you can see all my setup there. One of the primary reasons I fly Jetec is the 900 NG RSAT, which provides a 900 megahertz backup to the internal system. So I'm flying both 2.4 and 900 megahertz backup, which for me is really important in a model this big. On the other side of the fuselage is the DSM ESC, which is a switch from Jetec. Essentially what this does is switch between A and B inputs here, and draws power from the input that's delivering the most power. So the way I have this set up is on the speed controller, which is over here on the right hand side of the fuselage, or left hand side if you're looking from the tail. I have that set up to output 7.2 volts. So the flight battery, the LiPo, is outputting 7.2 volts from the ESC. And as you probably know, the lithium-ion battery here, the Jetec, outputs 8 volts when it's fully charged. So this will deplete over time, And obviously, as it's going into the DSM ESC, once it gets to 7.2 volts, the DSM will switch over to the LiPo. By that time, you're a long way into the flight. Essentially, what this means is the Li-ion battery, the lithium-ion battery, never goes below 7.2 volts, because when it does, the DSM ESC will take over, and the LiPo will then have power drawn from it. By that point in the flight, it's normally about time for landing anyway, but it does mean that basically the Li-ion's kept in really good shape. I never discharge it below about 7.2 volts or so. Okay, this is a little bit tricky to film, but you can see the ESC inside the back of the setup here. So here's the Jetec E-80. Supplied by MiG-Flight, as I say, installed by Baudis. But right the way in here, you can see that ESC is sort of stuck to the side wall here. I initially Velcroed this in into the side of the GP15, but the Velcro is too thick. And what I found was the Jetec itself, the E-80, was actually binding slightly against the side of it when it was retracting. But the ESC is sitting on the side of the fuselage here. And as I say, the side of the Jetec just here was actually touching the ESC, so it wasn't folding down properly. So what I ended up doing is epoxy resining the ESC to the side of the fuselage. Just made it very, very strong in terms of the install, but more importantly, it made it so that the Jetec itself sat flush when it was retracted into the fuselage. So I've just brought the camera down for a lower angle here. So looking back here, you're looking towards the bulkhead here for the Jetec. You can see how the Jetec is mounted, and you can see the job that Baudis did when they installed this. The little pieces of metal you see there in the tubes, these little guys here, those are the hinges for the opening door of the fan unit, actually. So you can just pull this forward. So I won't do it now, but you can pull the little piece of metal forward, and the doors come off of the Jetec unit, so you can really get in there and do maintenance if needed. There's two springs here on two pieces of metal which pull the door closed, and that's just mounted to the bottom of the fuselage. And you can see the wing joiner there because I've still got the wings on. So there's the Jetec unit. In fact, right up there as well, you can also see the spring-loaded clip for the canopy as well. Okay, so I've got the GP15 up on the CG meter. This is just my trusty old multiplex CG meter. I've got it balancing at exactly 105 millimeters. You'll have to take my word for it, probably. If I just slide this forward slightly, you can see there's my scale. It is balancing, as you can see, it's tipping forward slightly. You can see there on my scale, 105 mils. So that's where she's balancing right now. So at 105 millimeters, for me, it flies absolutely perfectly. In a dive, accelerates really well and doesn't pitch up, importantly. So let the controls off. Obviously, you know how to set up the CG in flight, but letting off the controls at 105 millimeters means it'll continue the dive pretty much in a straight line. And that's how I like to fly, personally. I don't like the whole sort of heavy nose, which means it will pitch up in the dive test. So 105 millimeters flies really, really well. Baudis give you 4 brass slugs. These weigh 722 grams, is what mine do. Probably 720 grams or so. So if you're enjoying the video, please hit like and subscribe underneath. Subscribe to the channel. It really does wonders for the algorithm, apparently. And if you've got any questions, please do, or even thoughts, just pop them in the comments underneath. If you own a GP15 and you want to sort of add some thoughts in there, it'd be great to hear from you and just get a bit of a conversation going about this wonderful model. a little bit on the servo installs then. This is the tail, obviously, of the GP15. You can see here the rudder and elevator servo. So rudder servo is mounted upside down. There's a template for this that I've made. So this just matches up to the rudder back here. So I've just made these for each of the servos, for the rudder and elevator, actually sorry, rudder and flaps and ailerons. The elevator servo is kind of interesting. It's slightly on an angle because the push rod here goes all the way up to the top of the fin where it's secured at the top. So if I just come around the top of the GP15, you can see there's a little fairing on the top here that is just secured with some bolts. And at the top here, golly, I'm not sure if you can see that, but there is a little Allen key, little hex key there, which secures into the metal rod which joins the two elevator surfaces together. You can install the horizontal stabilizer either way around, but I tend to stick to one way, and that is with the hinge on the top. Only because it's I just make sure it's always the same way around, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think. The fairing feels a little bit flimsy. It's the only thing I think that probably would want a bit of an upgrade on at some point, maybe, I don't know. It's it feels like plastic to me, but I'm probably going to break that at some point. It feels like it's quite flexible. I don't know, maybe it's okay, but there's no forces that act through it. So, and it's just got two little bolt holes on top, and you can see that just slots into the hex nuts there and fares in the top of the horizontal stabilizer with the fin. But I mean, like I said, there's no forces that act on it, so maybe it's okay, but I feel like it might get broken in my kit bag or something as I'm traveling to a ridge. I just thought I'd show you quickly the surfaces working on the tail section here. So here's rudder and elevator. Hopefully you can see those are kind of working. And then deflecting the surfaces on the elevator here. Just deflecting the elevator. I haven't got that fully pinned down, but you can see those kind of doing their thing. So to start with, I want to talk a little bit about how I've set up the DS16 with the model. So firstly, it's worth mentioning that I've got 3 settings switching between thermal, speed and flat setting. So if I just come in here with the GoPro, you can see that the flaps and the ailerons come down to just a few millimeters, and that's the whole surface of the wing. Just comes down by a small amount. So that's a thermal setting. And then on normal, just a flat setting all the way through. And then speed, or sort of reflex setting, you can see I've got the whole wing surfaces coming up by just a millimetre or so, 2 millimetres or so, all the way through the model there, as you can see it best on this side of the wing. I've also got a butterfly setup on the left-hand stick here. So if I pull that all the way down, you can see the servo stop humming. A full butterfly setting there. So flaps all the way down, ailerons up just a small amount. You can see that just on the wingtip here. But with that also, I've got a small amount of elevator as well. So if I just dial this in, hopefully you can see that if I come really tight with the GoPro, there's a small amount of elevator compensation. So elevator just goes down a small amount just to compensate for that. I found that about right. I've also got similar setup on the flaps as well. So I've got flap control here on the right hand side, rotary control. Flaps come down a fair amount actually. So you can see here on the rotary on full flap. And then on the tail surfaces with the flap setting, you can see that's what the tail or the elevator does on that full flap setting. So I thought you might find that interesting just to get a sense of what the compensation is. So essentially when flaps come down, you need down elevator to compensate. And what's that on my setting there? I mean, that's probably what? Maybe like 4 or 5 mil or something of down. I've got throttle cut set up on the GP15. You can see it's off at the moment, but when I turn off the throttle cut, you'll also notice that it opens the Jetec as well. So essentially this single switch is performing two functions. It's opening up the Jetec, but also turning off the throttle as well. So I can't fold up the Jetec, and my throttle is on the side slider here. There's no throttle, of course, when the Jetec is closed up, but then if I flick this switch, not only does it turn off the throttle hold, but it also opens up the Jetec at the same time. So as I say, I can't fold the Jetec in and still have the motor on. That would be bad, obviously. So there's just a little function that I've enabled on the GP15. It's worth saying also that I've set up a permanent roll control on the flaps as well. So roll is on here, and you can see I've got a fair amount of roll control on the flaps. Hopefully you can hear me over the servos. I haven't set up any flap to elevator mix at this point in terms of snap flaps, but I may do that at some point. But I also can turn that off using switch D here. So that just now is controlling ailerons. But it also switches in a rudder mix as well, so hopefully you can catch all that. So ailerons and rudder mixed, but switch D here turns off the ailerons. So I use that essentially for thermaling, really, so I can just do very gentle thermal turns. But with this switch enabled, I put in some aileron control too, which really does improve the roll rate. Actually, it's a fantastic roll rate with that. In terms of aileron differential, I'll move the control here so you can see. So I get a fair amount of up aileron and then just a smaller amount of down. So just a slight bit of aileron differential here. Hopefully you can get a sense of that if I'm not too close. So you don't want too much down, because all you do is create drag. But with aileron in the positive value here, I'm a little bit more positive than negative, and I found that works quite well. It doesn't give you any weird draggy effects and start dragging the wing round. So a little bit more up than down works well on the GP15. These are the stats on this particular GP15 in terms of its wing loading and flight characteristics. This model weighs in at 5.6 kilos unballasted, which gives it a wing loading of 79.4 grams, or fully ballasted with the 722 grams of ballast. That comes out as a wing loading of 86.8 grams, and that will be a flying weight of 6.1 kilos fully ballasted. So if you're looking at those stats, it's not a slow model by any stretch of the imagination. So I found particularly on landing, but also very much on launch as well, the model likes to fly very quickly. So I've been caught out just a little bit on launch a couple of times. So launching off the slope, it needs to pick up speed before you can really think about sort of getting any forward motion going with it. So a really hard kind of throw is definitely on the cards. I've started launching with a bit of flap as well, or even the motor out as well, but the motor's very loud next to your ear, so just something you've got to be mindful of. And then on landing, as you can see on this model, the flaps aren't huge. It doesn't slow down, well, it does slow down fairly well, but it doesn't land very slow at all. I've seen people talk about it landing speeds which are, sort of walking pace or whatever, and I definitely wouldn't say it's walking pace landing speed, this model, unless you've got a 20 mile an hour, blow in front of you, then maybe. So if you compare the GP15 with the Skywalker, Skywalker comes out, or my Skywalker at least, comes out at 55.6 grams per decimeter, really quite a low wing loading in a way, and at that wing loading it really floats, particularly on landing. Very easy model to land in comparison to the GP15. So my Skywalker comes out at 4.6 kilos unballasted, and with its large flaps and its large flying surfaces, it really does land very slowly. Compare this also to the GP Racer. I've got the GP Racer fuselage, which is a pure glider. That comes in at 3.3 kilos unballasted, which comes out at 47.4 grams per decimeter. So I've been flying the GP Racer quite a bit actually. So this is essentially the GP15 wing, but on a sport glider body. And boy, oh boy, is that a nice model. Really, really beautiful model. I can do a bit of review on that if you guys are interested. So, the GP Racer 47.4 or 57.6 fully ballasted. And I have to say at 47.4 with the GP Racer glider, it's a sweet, sweet model as well. So again, really wide speed range, not as fast as the GP15 as you can imagine, but sure does pick up the lift really nicely. Here's the GP15 and the GP Racer wingtips just for comparison. If you buy the GP Racer and GP15 combo, you get both of these in the kit. The GP15 is the larger winglet here, this tall guy, and the GP Racer is this small one. I'm going to do some trials with this actually in flight to see if I can catch some more of the characteristics of these. I don't think they're just for aesthetics, but maybe they are. Of course, the large raked winglet like the GP15 here should be more efficient, yeah, I'm going to do some more trials on these and check them out. I've been flying the GP Racer with its small wingtip there, a little winglet. Flies beautifully. I haven't really noticed a difference. I have accidentally put the GP Racer winglet on the GP15 and didn't notice a difference, but if I find anything out, I'll come back to you and let you know. So like all Baudis models, the LDS are made of aluminium, and you have to keep these oiled fairly regularly. I think Baudis say every 3 months or so, but I actually do it on every few flights actually, so perhaps sort of once a month. I use 2 oils. I use this Super Lube, made in the United States. Found this to be really, really good. But recently started using this Hoodie bearing oil, which is meant to be very, very good. It's for radio control cars, I think, more often, but it's very, very thin. And it's just a case of just popping a drop on the hinges. Like I said, I do it once a month or so, every few flights, just to keep them absolutely oiled as much as I possibly can. The problem, of course, is that over the years, if you don't keep them lubricated properly, you start to get play in the LDS system, and that's something you don't want. So I keep mine oiled, probably more than I should, but I don't think you can over-oil these things. So in terms of flight characteristics, the GP15, as I said, is a fast model. The wing loading really contributes to this, of course. The GP Racer is a slower model, but they both have their place, I think, and you can see from this footage it likes to fly quickly. The handling is fantastic, particularly with the flap to aileron mix. I think that works really, really well. The roll is fast and responsive, and the pitch responsive is fantastic as well. I added a little bit of exponential curve in to sharpen this up a little bit. I found that the pitch up wasn't quite sharp enough, so I added a little bit of exponential to give me a little bit of extra response, initial sort of pitch inputs on the stick. The engine performance is fantastic. So this is a Jetec E-80, and it'll climb at about 45 degrees and maintain speed in that climb. But yeah, the GP Racer, I think, is an equally great contender. So I opted to get the 2 models as a kind of combo, which is a really fantastic combo, I think, actually, for the cost. You know, for a few extra £100 you get both models, and they're they really complement each other very well. I think if you've got the money and if you're thinking of doing it, I would definitely get the GP Racer fuselage as well, just because it is such a fantastic combination. The Racer is a much floatier model, much slower model, or it can be a lot slower than the GP15, which means those thermal turns are just that little bit tighter, and yeah, you can find those thermals a bit easier. Okay, so that just about wraps up my overview of the Baudis GP15. It's a fantastic glider. This isn't really a review, but if I had to review it, I would say get one if you have the inclination. It's not a model I would say for, you know, amateurs. It's definitely sort of up there in the kind of higher end of things. I've read lots of reviews of this before buying it, and a lot of people were saying that this is the ultimate glider really at the moment, and I kind of have to agree with them. It's a perfect size, 4.3 meters wingspan. It really does fly beautifully. Very exciting, very dynamic to fly, and I think the combination of the GP15 and the GP Racer, you can see the GP Racer here. Yeah, the GP Racer is a great model, great combination with these two. In fact, they complement each other really, really well. So yeah, overall a really, really great model, and I'm glad it's sort of in my collection. I'll do some additional videos on the Skywalker and the Skywalker XL if you guys are interested. So if you've enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments underneath. I'd be very happy to answer any questions you might have about the model or any of your thoughts on it. And I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, and yeah, hope you enjoyed it.